take this out of here for now. I have a little pouch here. It's a JanSport pouch. I don't know that it's critical that obviously you can use whatever kind of pouch you want. But when I'm in the field, I store my GPS in here. And I've got it set up so that I can put this pouch on my belt. I can put it onto a little fanny pack that I carry around. And here's what's in it. Obviously the GPS is part of it. My compass, Silver Ranger. It's a nice sighting compass. Topographic map, which I've produced and printed off from my topo software. A field notebook to take notes, and a pencil to write with. So that's my navigation system right there. And what I'm going to talk about, obviously, are these two parts. I want to say from the start that this unit here is no replacement for this. If I've got to go out with two things in my pocket to go on a scouting trip, these are going to be those two things, because they're absolutely going to work. Obviously paper isn't going to go bad, and this is a special kind of paper that I'm going to talk about in just a second. And obviously compass is always going to work. GPSs, on the other hand, are subject to failure. Batteries can go dead, you can drop them. You can see that I've dropped mine here. It's got a crack in the glass. It didn't affect the performance of it, but it could have. And with any GPS, if you get into really steep terrain under thick cover, particularly when there's a lot of moisture in the air with clouds or rain, sometimes you're not going to be able to pick up a good signal. So I would never depend on my GPS as my primary hunting navigation tool. That's what the map and compass are for. I use this primarily for supporting the topographic map that I use, and I'm going to talk about how I do that. One other point that I'd make about the GPS is that I don't think I've ever used it to navigate my way back to a place that I've picked out to hunt in. If I've chosen a spot where I'm going to hunt, I typically have figured out a way to get back into that spot using terrain features, like I'll follow a creek until I get to a certain point, or the top of a ridge or something like that. And then if I need additional navigation aids, I'll use reflective tacks or flagging tape or something of that nature to find my way in. But I don't think I've ever used my GPS and followed it to get to a hunting spot. What I use it for primarily is to mark a location, to record a location, and then I'll take that location from my GPS and I'm going to incorporate it into a customized topographic map that I'm going to make using my topo software here. So what I'm going to talk about now is the process for how I do that, and how these two pieces here of my hunting navigation kit work together to not only help you effectively navigate through the woods, but also to record the results of your scouting trip. And by doing that, this map really gets to be more and more useful. The more information I can put on here about what I know about the area that I'm hunting in, the more and more useful this map becomes to me. So we're going to talk about that. This is not going to be like a traditional gear review where I'm going to go through every feature on each of these products. That would take hours to do because they both have a lot of capabilities. What I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on those features that I find most useful in using them together. So let's just hit the highlights on each of these two products and talk about them just a little bit individually. This is as I said, the National Geographic Topo State Series of topographic maps. There are 28 different versions of this depending on the state that you live in. I live in Tennessee, and for Tennessee they've combined Tennessee and Kentucky together into one package. It has, I think it's 7 CD-ROMs for all the data required. The maps come from scanned U.S. Geological Service 7.5-minute topo maps. Each set of discs actually has 3 sets of map series. It has the 1 in 500,000 series. It has a 1 in 100,000 series, which is also known as the 15-minute series. And the series, which is really the only useful series for hunting purposes, which is the 1 in 24,000 series, also known as the 7.5 minute quads. You'll see them called 7.5 minute quads frequently. The quality of the maps that you get because they're scanned is excellent, and probably the neatest feature is you can store a variety of custom symbols on the map, and you can print them out onto whatever type of paper you want. I'm going to talk about briefly what this is. This is a type of paper also produced by National Geographic. It's called their adventure paper. It's some awesome stuff. And just to show you how awesome it is, I have a pitcher of water here. I'm going to take this map. I'm just going to drop it down in my pitcher of water. Okay, here's the map that I showed you a few minutes ago. It's been soaking in this water for about probably 10 minutes now, and I just want to show you that despite that, I can rub it with my fingers. I get no running of the inks. It's completely locked in there. And by the way, I printed this map a couple hours ago just on my inkjet printer. The quality of it is excellent. Obviously that is somewhat determined by the printer that you have, and I use a pretty good printer, but just the ability to create a map that's waterproof. I'm going to bring it out here, shake it off a little bit, get the water off of it. I'll show you that this thing is just about indestructible. It's a type of a plastic actually that is virtually tear-proof and just great stuff. You don't have to do any further waterproofing. You don't have to carry it around in a plastic bag, and it's completely customized. You can see on this one that I've added some symbols on here, and in my next segment I'm going to pull my computer over and I'm going to show you exactly how we go about creating a map like this with the Topo software. So this is what the Topo software looks like running on my computer. And yes, I know there are better ways to demonstrate software than by videoing a screen, but I don't know how to do it, and I'm not a computer guy, so hopefully this will be good enough. One disclaimer before I go any further, and that is, as it says up here, this map is for demonstration purposes only. This is public land. This is the Cheatham Wildlife Management Area near Nashville, Tennessee. I will tell you that the area that I'm going to show, I'm using just for demonstration purposes. I've never set foot on it. If you want to go out there and look around and see if you find the stuff that I point out, if it looks like it, it would be probably the greatest coincidence of all time, because I just made this stuff up. So if any of you guys out there hunt this particular area, hopefully I won't have lots of people tramping around your hunting area. Didn't mean to. Like I said, never been here before, but it'll serve my purpose as well for showing you some of the features of this software. Okay, the basic tools that you need sit along the top of the screen up here, and basically all you do is select a tool that you want to use with your mouse, and then we're going to bring it down here and use it. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and show you how a couple of these tools work. The first tool I'm going to talk about is the route tool, and what it allows me to do is to draw lines. So for instance, this red line that I've drawn here has sort of an imaginary boundary line, just for the sake of assumption that this was a piece of private property that I wanted to, for my map, create a boundary line on. That would be the tool that I would use for that. I also used it here. I've drawn in areas that I use to mark fields. So let's say that there's a field in this area right here that I want to mark on my map as well. Maybe it's just not shown as well. Actually, what I'm going to do is, let's say that this is a cedar thicket, because that's going to allow me to do two things. Alright, so let's just say that basically the cedar thicket kind of follows this contour right here, and maybe it runs over here into the edge of this field. Okay, once I do my second click to close out the line, it's going to bring up this dialog box here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new style that I'm going to use to designate cedar thickets. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a style name. Okay, we're going to call that a cedar thicket. And then we're going to choose the type of line that we're going to use for that. So let's pick out something. Let's just let's make cedar thickets a purple line, and I can choose the line style, so I can hairline, thin, medium, thick, hairline dashed, thin dashed. Let's just keep it as a thin purple line. Okay, so now you can see I've added right here a line around what I'm designating as a cedar thicket here. Another use for the route tool is to measure distance along a travel route. Let's say I'm interested in knowing if I were to walk from the road here to the back property line back here, what that distance would be. You can use your route tool, just click on the starting location and draw your line along the travel route. Looks like I made a little detour there. On the second click, it's going to bring up this dialog which shows me that the length of that line is 1.13 miles. And I could name it if I want to, but I'm not going to. And this little box gives me access to kind of a neat little feature. I don't use it a lot actually, but you might find it interesting. This little box that says 3D flyover, when I click it, it's going to give me on the left side of my screen a sort of bird's eye view of the route. So you can see that it's following the route that I just traced, and it's showing me the terrain features in 3 dimensions. Over here on the right hand side of the screen, there was an arrow that traveled along to show me exactly where I was. Now once it's done, I'm in the 3D mode, and I can do some things with it. By holding down the right mouse button, I can rotate my view around so that I can look. This is actually looking back up the route that I came. I can look off to the side. I can also move the starting point by taking my cursor here, and by clicking the left button, I can move the arrow here to where I started, and then by moving the right button I can look over here towards that field, and I can change, if I want, I can change the tilt so that I can look down. I can change the elevation so that I kind of get down in the terrain, or I can get way up above it and tilt down and look at it. So it's kind of a neat feature. If you're pretty accustomed to looking at topographic maps, it probably is not super useful to you, but kind of cool nonetheless. Anyway, just wanted to show you that. Alright, the next tool I want to talk about is the symbol tool, and that's denoted by this little push pin icon up here. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to zoom in again so that you can see a little bit better what I'm getting ready to do. I use this tool for putting custom symbols on the map, and you can see here that I have some stars here, and I've got an X, and I've got a plus sign, and all these things mean something. Down here in the corner of my map, I've created a legend for what all of those symbols mean. And the reason why I do this is because when I go out on a scouting trip, I'll collect data about what I'm finding, and primarily during the preseason when I'm out looking for future feeding spots, oak trees that are producing a good crop of acorns, persimmon trees that have a lot of fruit on them, anything that I think the deer might be coming back to later. I can't remember that even the next day sometimes, much less weeks or months later. So I want to note it on my map, and that's where my map becomes sort of a living, breathing kind of thing, where it's everything that I'm learning throughout the course of the year I'm putting on this map, and it becomes much more useful as I go.